So you one day may have your own podcast.
I think it would be amazing.
What would you call it?
That's actually a really good question. I'm gonna have to think on that one.
Listen to me.
You ask me these questions on the spot.
You're gonna have to get your shit together. All right. I'm really disappointed. This
on it.
podcast is to talk about how much growth and improvement I've seen in you, and yet
We haven't hit the creativity portion of the growth on the journey. I think that's like step 7.
so I don't know what you're thinking, but like, there's only like 3 stages here. What's 7? I don't even know what is.
You can't limit yourself to 3.
Yeah, look, I'm going to be dying. Well, why don't we do this? Because it's been a bit since you've been here,
Yeah.
and since you don't have the Jen Show yet, or whatever you're going to call your podcast.
I do kind of like the Jen Show. I think that
The Jen Show, and
the
shit
generator show. The
Oh,
generator show?
I thought it was the Jen Show, but shit was it was silent. No, the Jen Shit Show. So,
That
but
would be
Jen,
most accurate.
why don't you introduce yourself to people that love you?
Yeah, Jen Reininger at the Yonder Group. Been within the data center community since 2015.
That's right. And we've had you as a guest before. So if you haven't heard Jen's story, you got to go back to that podcast. And you probably want to hear it twice because I still wasn't. If you think I'm not good at podcasts today, you should have seen how horrible I was back in those days, right? Just probably plowing through you. Every time I'd ask you a question, I wouldn't even let you answer. The worst thing you do is do a podcast and then try to listen to your own voice. It's the most annoying thing.
Can't even do it with my answer machine on my phone. Record that and just leave that alone.
You don't want to hear yourself talk. It's so annoying. Maybe there's somebody that does, but their parents are probably music teachers or some shit. And they had a better therapist than me. I don't know what it is, but we're here to talk about what today?
About the journey that I kicked off about technically October 1st is what I called it, is when I kicked it off. But I committed when we were down at DCAC.
All right.
In September.
So let's unpackage a lot of that, because that's a lot of cool shit that you just talked about. And it's really inspiring, right? And this human reset that we've been working on. And I have the 2 Midwesterners. I got Jesse from Pig's Knuckle, Ohio. And you're from which part of Ohio are you from? Like the other side of the bridge, right?
Yes.
All right,
We'll say the other Cincinnati.
Yep. Oh, look, your pinky almost came up when you used that term, like such but this is like the high class, and then you got it's Germantown. Yeah, like the taint of Ohio, he said, or something, right? But so you guys both have a lot in common, right? And you come from the Midwest, and I felt that commonality was also a really great parallel to this narrative as we started sharing your story. And this is really about you. And those that have been listening have seen that we're trying to unpackage some things in others, right? That people have been helping unpackage a lot of shit in me that needed to be fixed. Not that I was broken, but I just needed to be better at certain things. You're so sly. You should be you are like a secret.
Didn't you know that was like my past life?
Yeah, I like that. So that's going to be part of the name of the new show.
Yes.
So, but we're trying to fix people. So we're amateurs trying to change the world here, right? But we do have friends, and we've all been at different parts of this journey in our lives. Some of us are healthy, and the trinity of person, right? Where it's either your mental fitness, your emotional fitness, or your physical fitness, right? Physical, mental.
And I added a few more on there.
Emotional, spiritual. But those things, right? I think that you go through this, your spiritual health, your mental health, your physical health, emotional health. It all is part of the journey. And when you're going through those stages of the journey, you're also like, you were a daughter before you were a woman, before you were a mom, before you were a wife, before you were a husband, or
I was
a
never a
mom.
husband, I promise you that.
You could have been. This is Ohio. No one's judging you. But you were all these things while you're going through these journeys, and you were a lot of different types of people at the same time. So I think a lot of us end up a little bit confused about where we're at and how the fuck did we get here sometimes. And I love this industry. You love this industry
Absolutely.
too. This is where we're building our careers from. This industry has a lot to offer because it's a really mature industry where the soup's not done cooking. There's a lot of growth to take place. Everybody is ready for the explosive growth of AI.
Yeah.
And we're looking at how do we solve for more AI? And we're like, well, we need better supply chains or more efficient designs and equipment that's more efficient or more sustainable. But at the same time, all of that puts pressure on one resource, and that resource is the human, right?
Yeah.
The human beings writing code, the human beings that are using their hands to build shit. So we're trying to fix humans. And you bought in on that because I'll start with the best part, I think, of this story where you and I have been clicking because we've known each other for a bit. Yep. I think I was probably talking shit at you at DCAC and I said, you should come. I said, you should come for a walk with us. And you're like, bitch, I'll walk. And you did. We walked Town Lake and it was probably like the first time and you were wearing like Vans or something. I forget.
It was like ridiculous.
Boating shoes.
Yes.
Hey, dudes.
It was like something you would like go into Target and like just wear like no socks. And you guys are like, go put socks on. And I'm like, no, I'll be fine. Like, I'm going to be a badass. Like, here I am with you and Carly, like two of like the most badass people I've ever met. And I'm like, no, I got this. Like, I'm totally going to walk. Kirk, I had the most giant blisters on the bottom of my feet right before I'm about to start this, journey, which is kind of what kind of kicked it off, right? Like being at DCAC, you guys invited me on this walk. Here I am wanting to be super cool with you guys and walk with you. Regretted the not going and getting socks and listening to you guys. And never, I don't think I ever told you that part.
No. You like, have to tell me because I do remember I'm like, you may want to throw some. And you're like, listen, Kirk, I'm from the Midwest.
I'm totally.
We bitches are bad. Yeah. And I was like, all right, we'll see how this. And
I didn't even tell you afterwards. No.
You didn't complain once.
No.
So, but now I need the whole unfiltered story. I won't interrupt you.
Yeah, no. So I like got back and I'm like, why do my feet hurt so bad? And I looked, I'm like, holy cow, like on the balls of my feet, like on both of them. So I had to like, when I got back to Cincinnati and get like those cushion things like for your feet. I'm like, I am actually now old, right? Like now I have to like go buy this stuff at Walmart or Walgreens or whatever. But I was like, I'm not going to tell him. And so I think I did kind of think like, I'll wait to tell him until the podcast comes out.
Well, listen, I love that because sometimes it doesn't matter what people tell us. We're going to have to learn the hard way, right?
That is my motto. And sometimes it takes me a few tries to be like, well, was that really the lesson? Let me see if it happens again.
I think it's not a bad thing, especially for you, right? I mean, you're a, boss bitch at work and boss bitch probably mom for all I know. And you don't have time to not have all the answers all the time. Yeah. So no man is going to tell you like, what do you mean? I've been walking this earth for a bit. I know what I need when I do and do not need socks or better shoes to walk with, because I do remember we were walking on gravel too. It seemed like, and it was kicking sand up the whole time. I was getting it in my shoes and I was like, I'm okay. My shoes were designed and my socks were designed for that, but I didn't think yours were.
Nope, they weren't.
So how miserable was that walk on a scale of 1 to 10?
I mean, like,
just don't laugh.
I have 2 kids, right? Like I have 2 kids. So like I know pain, but like, was it pleasurable? No. Like the conversation was great. So that was a great distraction. But I will say the next week when I had to kick off this journey and do my 30-30, that was worse than probably the walk, right? Like, because now I'm like, aware of like the pain like, and what's going on.
Dude, I love that. So, because you have a very positive, infectious attitude with that energy you put out. And that's what when I saw you for the first time in a bit, I'm like, your energy is even way higher, right? And we're going to talk about that because you did that thing and I knew that it sucked for you, but I did not. I wish that I only was able to enjoy the moment of knowing
I was not going to give you that pleasure. Never.
But somehow you wanted to do it again. But somehow, like, I think it was at like the breakfast the next day or something like that. We started talking. And how did we get to where you're at? Like the 30-30 for 30, like walk me through from your perspective, because one, we were really having these conversations together walking, and this is all DCAC week. So like we were doing a lot of that. I mean, when DCAC was over, all the bars were getting opened up and I went and hung out at one of those places for about 45 minutes. And then I left and I went back to the hotel and I went and walked Town Lake at like till 10, 11 o'clock.
I think you also got lost.
I did, because I let Carly lead, and that was the worst decision you can make, because one, she's Air Force and they don't know how to navigate for shit, and she's blonde, so, but going back during this walk, we were walking and you never let on for a second that you were in any pain. So kudos to you for being a badass. And we generally enjoyed that whole conversation, because I have found that the more that I'm doing things whilst in motion, it's hard to be negative when you're doing something positive for yourself like that. And the physical body is connected to our minds, right? Like you and I were talking about yesterday. I'm like, have you ever worried about something so much that your stomach is like shaking and you,
Amen.
okay, but that's just telling you the power the mind has on the body, and it could be used and weaponized by us if we flip that. So, here we are talking about something about making ourselves better the whole time. And you were just sponging everything up. Carly's throwing, shit at you from a woman's perspective. And I'm trying to tell you how I, paint by numbers on my side. And something stirred. And we almost, Carly and I think when you were asking questions, we both kind of looked at each other and we could see eye to eye because you're really short.
Yes.
So you were walking in the middle. And I remember looking and she's like, she's getting it. Right. And tell me what you were getting from that, because I think the way that you have been since that has been, I think that it has to be addicting to hear all the people that are like, Jen, man, you're a whole nother force right now. It's got to be.
It's super cool. All right. I think it really even started maybe slightly before DCAC when we were prepping for the panel for, when it was Carly, Kayla, Lindsay, and God bless Luke. Right. And I remember like on those, conversations, you were like, I'm going to challenge you guys. You guys have to do something, right? Like you got to be creative with this. And like, I remember like some of the things that Carly was saying, I was just like, I don't idolize people. And like, I actually, for that moment, I was like, she's very inspirational. Like, I want to be a badass like Carly. And I was like, this is really cool. And I think we could make a difference. And so, it was having that walk with, you and Carly and just seeing like your guys' outputs and conversations. And I was like, I love people, one that challenge me. Like, if you can challenge me in a conversation, and when it can be a conversation, it can be on, intellectual things, it can be on physical things. Like, I wasn't going to tell you I was hurt, walking that, thing. Like, I like the challenge. I like to be, put in a position where I don't know the answer, which is very often, right? But like, I like when someone calls me out on that. And so I was kind of feeding off of your guys' energy on that walk. And I was like, you know what? I want to do something different. Like, I want to learn how to make this better, right? And I was not happy. Not like super sad or anything, but I knew there was something missing from my life. And, it wasn't something like, I'm not gonna say I wasn't happy at home, but there's something missing at home. There's something missing in my career. And what is it? It's probably me, right? Like there's a part of me that's missing that will make up for those items that I think are quote unquote missing in those certain areas.
So you arrived at that. And I think we all saw the little light bulb pop, because even you started drinking like fake drinks with me too, right? Because I challenge you to find people that have partied in this industry harder than me. But at the same time, I have no desire to do it anymore. Like DCAC next year will have healthy hours as well as happy hours. But like I don't criticize or blame anybody that goes hard in the paint still. I used to do that all the time and I loved it. But I'm also at a point now where I'm like, I'm addicted to trying to see how I could get 1% better every day, right? Yeah. Something happened to you. And I remember you were like, where were we when you said, hey, do I have any suggestions? You just started hammering me with questions. Yes. And I was like, man, I'm going to have a hard time keeping up. You seemed to run hard towards something that made you uncomfortable and made you hurt. Mm-hmm. And that says something a lot about a person, right? So, and again, I think that this whole industry is beautiful, but it all ties back to us as people, and we need to understand how we operate as people before we can go operate better in business.
Absolutely.
Right? So towing this back, what was it that kept you rolling in terms of always asking? And then how was it being received when we were trying to feed you things that seemed we couldn't feed you stuff fast enough, but it was a framework or a template, or what was it that?
So it was, I think, like, one, I wanted to challenge myself, right? So you started kind of giving me ideas. You're like, first, just start with 30-30. But you said, here's a couple things. I will walk this, journey with you, but here's a couple things. And I think the biggest thing that stuck with me is you're like, don't talk to anyone about it. And put yourself first. Can you put yourself first, during this thing? And I was like, holy shit, yeah, I can do 30-30. I can keep my mouth shut and not tell people, but can I put myself first when I'm, a mom and I travel for work all the time, So like I come home from these trips and the last thing that my kids want me to say is, hey, I have to go workout or something, right? Now they're kind of seeing like, I'm a much nicer person at home, when I've had these, workouts and stuff like that. And, my daughter's gone on some of these walks with me. So, if they're wanting to join me, they can, but, this is something I have to do. And so I think when you said you have to put yourself first, that was the hardest thing for me. And my kids got it. They were super easy. Like, okay, like you go do you, mom. So that was helpful. And then
it's actually beneficial to explain it to them what you're doing so that they could be learning on this journey with you, right?
And so we've had these conversations. My son's 15, my daughter's 10, they're both old souls. So we have those conversations. I'm like, listen, I need to be healthy so I can be here for you guys. I'm doing this challenge with Kirk, they've watched the podcast, previously. Okay. So it's kind of been fun. I remember the first week that I kind of had completed this, right? Like I had gone through like 2 books a day, like that very first week. Like it was kind of insane. And I remember Nissa sent me a text. She's like, girl, whatever the hell you're on, whatever you're putting in your coffee, I want some. Like whatever you're doing, like keep it up. And I was like, and I hadn't told her, like what I was doing. And I was like, okay. Like,
but people are seeing
it. We're seeing the the difference, and
and that's
okay.
And that's addicting, right?
It was addicting, yeah.
Affirmation's great,
absolutely. And so, like, I gave her a couple of the books. She was like, "Hey, what are you reading then?" And I was like, "Here, read this one." And we talked about it, right? And so, like, I think the one that we were talking about was No Ego. Was I think the first one she and I talked about.
That's a gift. I just got the Compass team gave me that one a few months ago. Fantastic
book, right? And so like now we'll talk and we're like, well, that person is, just expressing emotional ways, and like I'd never heard of that, and there were parts of that book that I was like,
BMW,
but they don't understand. Yeah. And I was like, they don't understand. And so like Nis and I talked about it. I'm like, you know what? Like they may not understand certain, aspects of what we're going through, but this is a good counter, conversation of it, and so we need to be aware of when it's emotional waste and stuff like that. So, we talk about it a lot. I think it was the following week, you and I and Jesse and Rob and Anthony, we were in Virginia. And that was the next time. I stepped outside when we were having drinks, which I was not drinking at the time, but had my mocktail. Stepped outside to call home, and our JV partner came outside. And he's like, hey, time out. Like, what did you do? Like, you look different. Like, what did you do? And I was like, and like at that time, like we were like 10 days in maybe. I was like, there's no physical results he's going to see. And I was like, I am
different
happy,
energy.
right? Like
different
he's like,
energy.
Really, it's just you're happy. And I'm like, I swear I've not had any work done. Like, look at the lines. Like, there's no work done here. And he's like, well, I'm really happy that you're happy. Like, he's like, but there is a difference to you. And he's like, and it was noticeable. He had no idea. Like, there have been times, I've known him forever, right? Where I'm on a routine of working out every morning or I'm not, right? Like, and so like, I'm not sure if he kind of realized that I was back into that, cycle or not, but yeah. So that was, I think, the second time that I was just like, okay, so now we've seen the output of Jen, professionally has improved. And then, there's just the happiness part, right? That, other people, are seeing as well.
Well, back up. What about at home with your kids? Did you feel like if your kids were calling in right now, would they be like, yeah, now they're going to ring and be like, she's a way better mom now. But like, did you find that you were able to maybe have a better emotional range when you engage with them?
Absolutely. Okay. Like my kids, like I've kind of lucked out. They're pretty easy kids. I do not, associate that with
you had to spank them how many times when they're younger to get them that?
One time. Both of them got one spanking per
time. Used to be so much tougher.
Right? Like, but they have never like, I used to tell them like, here's a rule. You got to break a rule this summer. Like, it's just way too easy.
Don't just pay attention when I'm telling you. Yeah. But your kids saw it.
They did. And my son like enjoyed, like, I went to the gym with him. He was like super big into working out. And so we've gone to the gym a couple times together.
Has it changed what you guys eat at home? Or
yes. So like, I'm not a cook. DoorDash is on speed dial. Like my kids have the DoorDash, on their phones now. So like when I am out of town, they can get food. But when I think it was month 2, you're like, okay, clean eating. And I was like, okay, that means we got to probably cook. So, my kids are now learning. My daughter's pretty good with cooking. Like she likes to bake a ton. But my son had never cooked anything but warming up SpaghettiOs, like there were times where it's like, how do we make spaghetti, mom? So now, he was there with me, like making steaks, like doing all of these, different recipes. And he really enjoyed it. I still really do not enjoy cooking, if I'm being honest, but I enjoy the healthy
as you
cooking,
evolve.
Right? Like,
as you evolve, Jen, I promise you're going to begin to build almost a relationship with the food you eat because of how it makes your body feel.
Oh, I love the healthy food. Like, I eat healthy food all the time.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I will ever enjoy cooking.
We'll see.
Okay.
I bet you.
Are you going to challenge me on that? Is that like step 8?
Well, how many?
Learn to like
how am I doing on these challenges so far with you? I'm batting what's my batting average? What's the score? Jen is how many to Kirk?
Well, I think I'm always winning.
Shit.
I think I'm always winning here, right? Like,
right. A tie is not, yeah. I'll say you do. Look, man, you have been from my side. Let's pause, right? So from my side, and what we tried to do was establish biweekly cadence to where, like, you were you were a fast learner in the sense of you were very motivated. Mm-hmm. You had whatever your purpose was to do this, which is something I would love for you to cover.
Yeah.
But you were no one. Sometimes I find myself like not cheerleading because I'm not that for people, but I definitely am in their corner and an advocate with support. And there are times where I try to make people feel good sometimes if I get a sense that they're not, so that way I can maybe get them back into a healthier rhythm. You're someone I never had to do that with, right? And you would just every few days be like, hey, Kirk, next book. It was like that Homer Simpson's one where he's like, the devil's trying to stab him with more donuts. And he's like, more. That was you, yeah. Right? You were relentless. And I was like, I had to step up my game on podcasts and audiobooks because it takes me 2 or 3 audiobooks or something before I could find one that I'm like, that's worth sharing, yeah. Right? So I'm feeding myself a steady diet of shit. You're pushing me. I'm pushing you. We're on this journey together. And, as a byproduct, I'm dealing with a much different version of Jen, right? And I was feeling it every time I was engaging with you. I mean, even when we were out there with you guys in Virginia, you were marching with Rob and I around the Potomac in the mornings.
That was freaking awesome, by the way.
Yeah, those were fun. Like just getting lost. I don't even know where I think Chuck is probably the guy that gave us that.
Yeah.
But look, every time I see you, because I'm on the outside looking in, when we start these journeys, it's disenchanting because sometimes it's like when you go to the gym, it takes weeks, if not, a month to start seeing results. It's even harder when you're working on yourself upstairs because you can't see those results in the mirror, but you can see it in the way that people engage with you. They see a different level of energy that you put out as a worker and a teammate on the professional side, and they probably saw that massive change and shift your kids. It sounds like not only did you guys all benefit from a health because now you're cooking healthy shit together, but those moments give you a greater opportunity to have unfiltered exchanges with them, which again establish more, trust and loyalty with them too. Then there's a whole nother dimension of you that is the other side. Which side is that?
Being a woman.
The woman side,
which
right?
is this part that I still have lost. Like we just discussed this yesterday, and like it was kind of like hitting a brick wall. It was like, whoa, like you're 100% right. Like I have been a mom, right, for 15 and a half years, almost 16 years. And so like, that's been my identity along with, my career. And I was like, when you like brought that up, like, well, who are you as a woman? I'm like, I don't have another identity outside of being a mom and, having a career. And so like, that really like hit the hardest, not in a bad way, but like as a realization, like, okay, here's that other, side of you that now needs, some focus as well. And I don't even know where to begin on that one. Like,
well, let me see if I can help you. Right?
I know.
Well, here's the deal. You brought that shit on yourself because you're constantly like, challenge, what's the next stone? What's the next challenge? I'm like, listen, and I say this, like what we've tried to identify with Jesse's story is, with him, we started on the physical health. He had to get physically healthy. It was for his kids, for his family. Yeah. And then ultimately, for himself and for everyone else in orbit with him. And he's a big monster. It's a sin to take that much love and talent. And who doesn't love Jesse?
I love Jesse.
And not share that with other people. Not everybody is that type of person. He's got a gift. My thing is, we were working on his physicality first because that jumpstarts the mind, right? And then we get into the mental and emotional stuff. Yeah. And then when we can unpackage that and we run out of shit that's low-hanging fruit, then you got to go deep into the brain, and that's when you get into the spiritual stuff, and that's where you're getting into your subconscious, right? And to do that, that's a completely different journey.
Yeah.
I'm better off asking questions about your guys' journeys and helping guide you through them versus explain mine yet. But Jesse's journey has had a massive change on him. And you did the 30-30 for 30. And what that is we're getting ready to launch that in the middle of January, right? After everybody comes back and starts their New Year's resolutions, we're going to have one, which it's the exact same one that you started with, which was, you asked me where to start. And I said, it's simple. It's the same thing I told my brothers, anybody else. I'm like, walk 30 minutes out and 30 minutes back, regardless of where you're at and what you're wearing, for 30 straight days. And just start with that. And what people don't realize, how hard is that to maintain? Like, all you're doing is, maybe it's not hard, but it's the consistency.
Absolutely. Because I travel over, like, what was it, in October? I think I was gone 3 out of the 4 weeks.
Out of other countries.
Then in November it was, 3 out of the 4 weeks, and being out of the country. And I made sure, I was like, I am not going to let Kirk tell me that I didn't do it. Like, just like that walking, like, I don't need socks to walk. Yeah. But I remember, like, getting off the plane, landing, in Portugal, and be like, I got to go walk, guys. And people were like, come on, have drinks, like, da-da-da. I'm like, no, like, I got to go get my walk in. And, that was, really good. I got a couple people to join me the next morning, on it. But it was really interesting to see, like, the people that were working out on that trip. You could tell were the very productive people on that team. And, like, that was the first time I realized that, right?
Yeah,
and I looked at it and I was like, there are people, that aren't probably in this discipline of, working out, how does that fold into? And so it, like, did kind of make me think about that. And I was like, I absolutely did. I took 2 flights to get to Portugal and made sure that I landed, because I knew that it was going to be important, and, my new rule is, like, if you're going to drink, you are no longer drinking it after 10, right? Like, typically I'm even already in bed, on a work trip for that. I've never been a huge, like, drinker, at work events. Like,
it's prevalent in what we do.
It is, absolutely. And, like, I'm not saying that I haven't, maybe been overserved at a work event, but, you learn that lesson, like, and you're just like, I don't want to wake up and feel like shit the next day. Like, I'm 40 now. Like, I'm going to wake up and feel like shit anyway. You know? So,
and you don't recover as fast.
No, we do not bounce anymore. So, it was kind of interesting to see that, right? And, everyone thought I was still drinking hardcore with them. Like, you just throw some bubbly water in a lime and people think you're really drinking all night with them. And then the next day, you're up and functioning, and, they're not.
I'll tell you, I learned the mocktail trick is, a lot of times when you go up and you challenge the bartenders to give you something badass, that is a mocktail. Like, they don't get challenged that very often. They enjoy that shit. Give them a few extra bucks in their tip, and, like, they'll make sure that you have the best healthy drinks all night long without looking like you're the idiot that's not drinking and having fun with the rest of them. And I think that changes a lot of things. But what you were talking about was how you measured that you were able to, because you're now healthier. You were able to see the output and productivity of those that are healthier. You can measure people based on their output productivity, and you correlate that back to their health. Right? Isn't that amazing?
It absolutely is. And I remember, one of the leaders of the team, like, pulled me aside and he's like, listen, like, I don't know what you're doing. Like, and I was like, well, you're going to have to see the podcast on it. But, he's like, I don't know what you're doing, but, like, I see a difference. I see a difference in you, physically, professionally, like, there's a difference. Like, keep it up.
And look, in the first 30 days, all you had to do was the 30-30 for 30.
All I did. Yep.
And listen, people
and no drinking.
Well, the two most important parts I asked of you to do, because that's just a construct. You could talk to 10 different people. I mean, I know 10 different people that could give you 10 different things. You asked me what I did, and I said, this is where I started, is I woke up and I realized I couldn't even patch together 7 straight days of something that I committed myself to be consistent. And I said, it doesn't have to be hard. Like, even when I got out of that and I moved into the next phase, which was body, like weight training, I was only doing body weight, right? And I was like, I know I could throw away on weight more than that, but I was like, I have to earn that right. So I took the 30-30 for 30 very seriously. And I said, I don't know if I could do anything for 30 straight days. As much as it sounds it's easy, you and I both know it's not. No. And it's a challenge. And that's why we'll roll that out in January. But in those first 30 days that you did the 30-30 for 30, you were already getting dumped on without, I asked you, I said, how long until you saw any physical changes? And you're like, about 30 days. Because I told you, I said, the rules are this, don't tell anybody. Because it turns out there's a lot of pieces of shit in orbit with you that do not give a shit about you. They are just want to be on the inside so they can know when to root against you. Because I have learned that the same mouth that talks shit about me is the same mouth that the next day I'll get a phone call from them asking for a favor. Right. So that's why I learned I didn't have a liquidation of people. I had a very deliberate and intentional approach to how much energy I invested into letting people know what I was doing on my journey, because most people aren't in on it.
Mm-mm.
And then the other part, as I said, was you have to put yourself first. That's not easy, especially for a mom, right? So I'm like, I asked you, like, what was the first 30 days like? It wasn't as easy as you thought it'd be.
No, absolutely not. And like you said, it was actually the putting myself, first part. Like my daughter's like, hey mom, can you take me to the barn? I'm like, not until I work out. Like normally I would have been like, you know what, like I'll just go ahead.
That's what a good mom does.
She wants to do,
Yeah.
And it was neat because she, now looks at it and goes, hey, have you had your workout in yet? Like when you are done with that, can we, go do X, Y,
Fucking
Z,
awesome.
and so
because then you're teaching her that needs to be put first for her.
And so like, it's kind of been nice to see that, in both of them, my son's super big into his own workouts anyways, but, having him realize that other people need to do that, as
It's
well.
healthy.
And like, and so hopefully they both, kind of pick up on that.
So in that first 30 days, I was like, I couldn't feed you enough books.
Yep.
And
You're out of, by the way.
Actually, I do have more.
Okay.
But you had an appetite to do this. Let's pause real quick and scratch the pain on what that reason was, because typically there's only a few reasons why people make lifestyle changes, right? It wasn't like I said, hey, you have to quit this or quit that or start dieting. Like everyone makes an excuse for that shit. I'm like, oh, really? Just start by winning something. Do something for 30 days consistently. And if you could do anything for 30 days consistently, you can do more on top of that, right? And for you, like people are motivated by only a few things to make those lifestyle changes. You didn't need, out of anybody, you're the only person that didn't need any encouragement ever. And when I say anybody, it's not like I'm coaching. It's not like I'm guiding 100 people. But when people call and ask me, hey man, what's working for you? What do you think I'm going to do? I mean, there's no greater way to tell someone you care about them than to tell them what's good for their health. You're the only one that never needed any of that. And I never bothered to ask you, like, because you were on your own journey. Yeah. This was 100% the Jen show. So your journey was so laser focused that whatever that is that made it to where you were the only person that didn't need to ask me for motivation. What was that drove you to make this change?
I think that I was tired of feeling like I was in a stuck spot. And both like I said, like at home and at work, I felt stuck, right? Like there was nothing bad, nothing good, right? It was just kind of like stuck. And I was like, that's not the kind of person I am. That's not the kind of life I want to live. And when I saw you and Carly, like you guys seemed so motivated, like so inspirational. I was like, like I can do that, right? Like I can walk a couple miles with them, like in shoes, no socks. Like I can do this. I want to do this. I want to be a better mom. And now I'm learning I can't really be a better mom until I'm a better person, myself. And so I wanted to be happy again. And I think that's probably what it was. It wasn't like I was sad. It was I want to hit that next level of feeling good about things. And I think that's, really what it was seeing you guys inspiring others. And I was like, I want to inspire others. I want to inspire myself at this point. Right. So I was super excited about that. And that's kind of, I was like, all right, what can I do? Like, what are the steps to improve myself? And when you said like, this is your, first 30 days. And I was like, I think I came to you. I was like, well, you know what? I'm going to one up and I'm not going to drink for 90 days. And you're like, just do 30. Like
everyone
it's fine.
wants to be a hero.
Yeah.
Like just fucking 30 days, 30 for 30 is hard enough.
Yeah.
Try it. And then like, look, if you want to throw some shit on top of that, then but let yourself win.
Yeah.
And then like for the end of that 30 days, you were on fire.
Yes.
From the outside, I was like, all right, it was again a point where there was nothing, you were not, we have to roll for a while before we're leading ourselves on our own journey.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just need someone to light that spark sometimes, right? And you're going to be lighting a lot of sparks. I'm hoping that I could promise you right now, there are women that are listening to this podcast that are moms and they have a career too, and they don't want to compromise one thing for the other. So to keep those two things rolling hard, they give up on themselves as a woman, not maybe physically, but maybe emotionally, or maybe mentally, or maybe spiritually, and everybody's going to be able to relate. I think there's a part of the Jesse's story for his human reset that I think every man can relate to him in some capacity. And I think some women could in some capacity as well. For you, I think it's the same. I think that you're going to get, obviously, any woman that has been a mother could empathize for what you've gone through and what you go through. And now when I ask you a simple question, like, you want to know if you've Jesse used the metaphor that all men die twice. You know, men die in their 30s, they're not buried till they're in the 70s because they die when they're no longer dangerous. When moms become moms, the maternal instinct kicks in where they make themselves last, and they forget what's their favorite ice cream? How do they like their eggs made? What's their favorite restaurant? And their palate changes every 7 years. You know, they're not even the same one they were when they had. There's so much that changes on them that sometimes they can't make themselves happy. They don't know what makes them happy. So how is anybody else going to be happy? And that's the same for all of us as men and women, right? So for you and I to have this conversation, you're like, hey, what's next? And I'm like, well, the next part on the physical side is you're leading yourself through the journey yourself. And you're already doing that. You know, you're tracking your circles on your phone, you know, like you compete against yourself every day. But, the next part is I'm like, well, look, if you're done with that part and you're ready upstairs mentally, then you have to start tackling the emotional stuff inside. And that emotional stuff is the hardest part. That's where all the muck and dirt is at. That's where you're going to spend your time in a fetal position every night, or not every night, but every now and then. Yeah. And you're going to have to spend some time callousing the brain before you get them out the other side of that, where you understand how to establish healthier boundaries with everybody else, because now you put yourself first. And by doing that, you've protected you at all costs with every boundary that you have that you talk about. So we've talked about this already. And tell me, I mean, I think, like I said, I wanted to pause because there's a woman that's listening to this on her way into work, or, you know, sitting at work, or she's at the gym this morning and she's a friend of Jen's and she wants to listen to this. But there are women that are going to lean in hard right now because they're going to be like, I want to be happy as a woman too. And I don't know what makes me happy. It's been a bit because I've been too busy being a mom and a professional that could support and provide. So how do I reset myself to find out what I am as a woman that makes me happy? And that's the part of the journey that's emotional, and that's why it's so challenging.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And actually, like, as you were, you know, saying that, one of the things I was thinking, I was like, okay, like, where have I been the past few years, right? Like, I've been a single mom for a long time now, right? Like, only one, like, my parents are there to help me, you know, like, they live down the street, but like, I've been in survival mode for years, right? And it's like, you know, it's in drive, it's just coasting down the road, nothing great, nothing bad, you know, like, you know, there are obviously struggles, but like, it's pure survival mode, right? Like, is everyone alive? Is everyone like where they need to be? But I'm driving the vehicle, but I'm not, right? Like, and so I think that's kind of where I've been. And that's where I was like, I got to get out of just survival. I need to be in thrive mode, right? And that's, I think, where I wanted really to be, is in thrive. I didn't want to be just surviving. I wanted to be thriving throughout this. And I think that's probably where I kind of came into this, right? Is that I was like, just survival? Like, let's make it better than that. So.
But the challenge was, you asked me what the next level was. And I said, well, like I asked you, are you happy with yourself physically? You know, and you're like, I am. You know, you should be. You should be super proud of yourself because you're not even close to the same woman you were when I saw you at DCAC. And I think anybody that knows you would be like, that's not the same woman. Yeah. So imagine from late September, let's say October 1st.
October 1st.
And now that's 2 months. We're in December, right? So imagine where you're going to be in 2 more months from now. I mean, the sky's the limit. Yeah. You're on fire. My thing is, that was just the first part. And then you're like, hey, this other part is, and I said, that's the fucking hard part.
I think that is the part I'm most afraid of.
Yeah, people don't want to do that. I mean, like, especially guys, right? It's hard for dudes too, right? Yeah. Because we're not supposed to be emotional. We're not supposed to be any of that shit. And we're supposed to like I've had conversations with my own kids. I'm like, hey, bud, no one cares. Like, fucking work harder, and no one cares if you're unhappy. No one cares if you're happy. No one cares if you, it just, that's not what you're, and that's sad that I was giving shitty advice to my sons at those points. But that's where I was on my journey, where I'm like, I felt like my job wasn't to be happy right now. My job was to just do certain things, right? And I felt like, you know, I feel very much so when we were talking about like, well, how are you? You're happy with yourself physically. Are you happy with yourself as a woman? And that was my way of asking you emotions, because I'm a man that women think on feelings, men think on facts or what we believe in like, to be fact, right? So, and I don't say that as a negative. We just talk two different languages. And I said, are you happy with yourself as a woman? Because you're happy with yourself professionally, you're doing good, you're happy with yourself as a mom, you know, you have great kids. And I said, well, you're happy with yourself as a woman? And that's such a hard question.
Yeah.
And you were like, what the
like, I even told you, I think I was like, kind of got me a little teary-eyed there on that, because it, not in a bad way, but it was a question I've never asked myself. And so to like sit there and think on it, I was like, I have no idea, because who am I as a woman, right? Like, I'm a mom, I'm a professional, like, I'm a daughter, you know, I'm a sister, but like, who is Jen? I actually am not sure. Like,
well, you're a free woman, meaning like you're single. And what I said by that is you can approach it unlike if you're a married woman and you're like, I'm not the same woman. You know, if you're a married woman and you're not the same woman that you were when you got married, you know, you're sitting here going, I got to be happy with myself so that someone else who's with me could be happy with me too. Because if I'm not happy with me, who could be happy with me, right? And you look at this and I'm like, well, Jen, almost you take it back to, you know, you get to reinvent yourself anytime you want to as a woman, right? And now you get to go like, what is it that I look for? Like, what would I want in a partner?
Yeah.
And then you could almost trace that back, almost like the technology of an application, and maybe it does some of those things. But you could look at that and be like, I don't know, who am I today? What makes me happy? And you could define that based on some of those boundaries that you arrive at, right? But you'll know like, hey, I don't go trucking with this or those things. But you'll also know like, I'm open for these things. And these things would all make me happy, right? And when you can define what makes you happy, your vibe will determine your tribe, which means like that's what's going to create that orbit around you, because I've already seen it in you.
Yeah.
Right? I've already seen your more assertive nature in the way that you engage, and those are boundaries. Those are healthy boundaries, and it allows people to understand what you stand for, which makes, you know, you get more attention that way, right?
Yep, absolutely. And hopefully the right attention, right? Like, because of the vibe.
Yeah.
Not the bad end.
But I mean, those are things that you asked me like, well, shit, that's a shitty ass phase. How long am I in that phase for? And I was like, take a number. I'm on that.
Yeah.
I'm still stuck in that phase too. Right.
Well, I asked you the steps. I'm like, okay, well,
yeah.
What are the steps to get through
so
this
linear.
Like,
I'm like,
like
you're
just give me my checklist. Like, let me check this off of, you know, each day of how I'm going to
handle
this.
Take your checklist and your linear thinking and throw it out the door, because it's all abstract. It's all so subjective to who we are, where we're at in our journey, your physicality. And I'm like, well, you're going to have to do all the PT that you were doing, but just do more of it. Now you need to start finding a race, a 5K, go get yourself involved in this and that, or, you know, you got to go pick up some yoga classes or whatever it is, but you have to start being in orbit with more like-minded people that are like you. The reason why I told you to keep this shit a secret at the beginning is because people will feed off that shit, and not in a healthy way sometimes. But when you surround yourself and you're immersed with people that have the same mind as you and they want to make themselves better, then you could talk about that shit all day long, because that's something that everybody is filling each other's cups from. But there are times you could be as fucking happy as you want to be, and there's going to be people around there that just want to, no matter what, they're going to shit on that, right? So for you, now we're talking about, hey, you were so excited and all these things are going and you're crushing everything that's in a linear format. Now I'm like, take those constructs away that society says is whatever. And now think about yourself as a brand new woman. Like, who's Jen 2.0 and what would make you happy?